Welcome everyone to Street Smart Product Manager Live. I'm your host Shardul. This is our final episode of the year. We'll pick it up again in January, but this is it for 2025. We have a great show for you today with a very hot topic, stakeholder alignment, everyone's favorite. And we're joined by a very special guest, Ghali, who I'll introduce shortly. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time, I'm Shardul. I'm the founder of Street Smart Product Manager. I have a newsletter and I'm the host of this show. I've been around and done a bunch of product stuff. You can read the slide, startups to Fortune 100s and everything in between. Also perform and teach improv, fun fact. And now I help undervalued product managers and leaders gain the influence, respect, and impact that they deserve. And I do that through this show and my free weekly newsletter. I encourage you to subscribe. I've been told it's pretty good. I work hard on it. I've enjoyed a great career in product management, and I want that for you too. But I know how hard it is to deliver results in organizational chaos. It can be exhausting because the things that they teach you in the books and agile courses and traditional PM training actually don't work, in my opinion. So I focus on down-to-earth, practical, real-world tactics, no fancy or fluffy frameworks, just the things that actually matter that I've learned over 30 plus years. So if you're interested in career advancing insights most PMs never discovered, you can subscribe at streetsmartproductmanager.com. All right, with that, let's get into today's topic, stakeholders. So I'm going to give you a second to enjoy this cartoon. You can replace wine with your favorite drink. And I'll tell you, by the way, the Joe was just a coincidence, Joe. Okay. It just, I just happened to find it. So you know what, guys, that might encapsulate the bulk of Joe's advice here. We'll find out over the next hour. I'll tell you what, it's really good advice. So look, on a more serious note, dealing with stakeholders is one of the most common frustrations for product managers and product leaders. They're everywhere. You have to deal with them. When PMs are asked what part of the job they dislike the most, dealing with stakeholders is one of the most commonly cited as number one. It takes time, it drains energy, can be confusing, and is exhausting. It's the one thing that can make us feel like we're not good at our jobs or even question if we're cut out for it. This episode, I'll tell you guys, was one of our most requested episodes. So I'm glad we're finally able to tackle it head on. And that's why I am delighted to have Joe Ghali, with us today. So let me tell you who Joe is. Joe has worked in a number of organizations where he has had to navigate these treacherous waters. He's a seasoned product management professional who has led global transformation initiatives across industries from financial services to consumer goods and everything in between. He's a change management leader, and certainly dealing with stakeholders does involve some change management. So it's great that he's with us to talk about that. He's a PM trainer, coach, and a podcast host. He's helped organizations accelerate product development, build stronger teams, and deliver greater value to customers. His career highlights include boosting product development speed by 35% at Kimberly-Clark, launching a digital service at Baird that increased managed assets, and developing a connectivity strategy at Generac. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That enhanced operational efficiency. But more than that, what's really unique about Joe's approach, and one of the many things that impressed me about him, is his ability to blend systems thinking with storytelling, which is an incredible skill. He's also, frankly, irrationally passionate about product management, just like me. Every time we talk, we geek out on product stuff. So we probably actually only get 10% of the work done on any call we're on, but by golly, by the end of it, we feel great. His other great skill is his ability to get teams aligned in a common direction, which is what we're here to talk about, right? He has this ability to identify each team player's strength and use that to get everyone pulling in the same direction. Outside of work, Joe coaches under 16 girls fast pitch softball, and he's also the co-host of the Product Porch, a podcast where every topic is a product topic. And alongside his co-host, he brings real talk to the product management community, making complex concepts relatable through humor, real life examples, and actionable advice. I've been on it. Here's our episode, folks. It was super fun. You can click that QR code or go to theproductporch.com. Go check it out. It was super fun to me for me to be on it, but it's just generally like all their episodes are just great. So, Joe, I'm so delighted to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be part of this wonderful show, and thank you for all the kind words. Irrationally passionate. I've heard a lot in my day. You're the first one. I'm actually going to write that down somewhere. Actually, I think that's a pretty good way of describing it, Shardul. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, exactly. So, Joe, when I'm gonna actually stop the screen sharing for a second.
Yeah,
So, Joe, when people registered for this episode, there was a question included asking them to share their stakeholder challenges, and
yeah.
we got so many comments, so many things, and I want to dive into them. I'm sure people have come in here with all kinds of questions about their stakeholder challenges, but before we do, here's what I want to do. Let's just take a step back and just
Okay.
lay some foundation here and start with a very basic question. Who is a stakeholder? How do you define a stakeholder? Is everyone a stakeholder?
I mean, it's interesting. When we talk about stakeholders, I look at it from like two different spectrums, right? It's how much they're impacted by what you do and how much they care by what you do. And they're two they're nuances. There's two nuances to that, right? And so I think, early in my career, if someone said stakeholder, I would say, oh, it's like my leader or it's the head of the department.
Hmm.
It's not to some extent, but as I've kind of grown in my career and I've been at different organizations, I, your customers are stakeholder, right? They have a voice in what you do. Anyone that really has a voice in the decisions that you make, in the direction you take your product, that individual is a stakeholder. It's just how you manage their expectations that makes it the fun part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great insight. So customers for sure. And then internally, I think, it can be easy to start thinking like everyone is a stakeholder because, fun fact, everyone certainly has an opinion on not just the
Right.
product, but certainly your job, right?
Oh yeah.
I kind of developed this definition around from a decision-making standpoint internally, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyone who has a stake in the decision-making that drives the success of the product, I kind of prioritized them over the others. And I know that's making it a bit of a binary
Yeah.
definition. It's a bit deliberate. And what I mean by that is, of course, at the end of the day, you know, everyone has an interest and an involvement. Everyone from the designer, the junior most coder, to
Yeah.
the sales guy who's out there in the field, to the customer support, like certainly. Um, but you can't get them all in a room. And I don't know that you necessarily need to get all of their opinions or inputs or buy-in on like your
Yeah.
roadmap. But there are certain individuals who either retain authority to decide or certainly heavily influence it, or you just at least need to get their approval, right? What do you think about that? Like, so the other folks are certainly important team players, not to ignore
Yeah.
them, but I'm sort of maybe overly deliberately trying to draw a fine line just to sort of make my life
Yeah.
a bit easier in terms of, okay, who's an actual decision-making authority
Yeah.
versus, maybe they have just some interest or involvement in the product. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, kind of building off of it, I'll share this at the end of the session or of today's event. It's like thinking about like how much power some of these stakeholders that we deal with. Like we have individuals that have high power. Like I'll give you an example. When I worked in fintech, um, I had an individual, his name was Matt, and he was head of our legal team. He was, you know, anything we did online, I had to run it through him. And he had high power. Like this guy had the ability to turn off whatever I needed to do in a second. All I had to do is pick up the phone
Mm-hmm.
and he had that power, right? But then there are also individuals that have a high amount of interest in what we do, right?
Right.
So going back to that specific example, uh, our marketing team had high interest because what we were doing competed against other initiatives that were happening across the organization. So, you know, it would behoove me to collaborate with them on when we do the messaging, how we get it out there, where we get it. You know what I mean? Like how can we sequence it? So although they didn't have that power, they had high interest. And so I try to look at it from those two dimensions. But I mean, I think we're all saying the same thing, and I think someone on the chat even mentioned racy. Yeah, I mean that is who's responsible, accountable, a contributor. Who's someone. Those are you have many different individuals that you have to answer to, and it's like, and I think that's what makes stakeholder alignment one of the most challenging parts of being a product manager is you're herding cats, right? And
Yeah.
it's how do you best allocate and prioritize your time so that you're meeting with the right people during the day? Because so much of what we do, I mean, I think everyone on this call can agree, we're in a lot of meetings, right? And every organization I've ever been to, one of the biggest gripes I hear from product managers and product owners is I'm in too many meetings and I never get enough time to get work done. So I think it's just like, how do you balance all the different needs of the different individuals across your organization? And those are the two dimensions I tend to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. I think there's lots to unpack there. So yeah, certainly on the point about Daisy, or Dassy, or however the heck you pronounce it.
I
Certain
like DC better, but yeah.
There you go, Daisy. Okay, so we'll go with that. So certainly a useful tool. I love the example of marketing. We used to have a regular standing meeting with the marketing team where we would compare roadmaps. So as a product
Mhm.
team, it's really easy to get focused on which features are we prioritizing next and our release plans and whatnot, and matching that up with what marketing is planning to do because they're planning out for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. They've got a whole
Uh-huh.
set of things. If we need to have them pivot because we're planning a big product launch, we may want to align with some of the marketing stuff and get them to shift their roadmap or vice versa. Right. So I think
Yeah,
that's
actually,
really, really great. And the point of the meetings, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
no, no, no. So like just to even build off of that, I think this is where um, teams like marketing, sales, training, it's so imperative that we bring as product leaders, we bring them in early in the journey. It's almost like as you're doing discovery, as you're finding out problems, as you're learning, you're you need to bring them in early with you. They're like your co-pilots. It's like I used to have this graphic of the folks that flew the Millennium Falcon, and I had Chewie and Han and Luke and the whole crew, and I'm like, look, it's like flying the Millennium Falcon. It takes all of us. And so to the
And we're
point of
all trying to
marketing,
fly to the asteroid field.
I mean, literally everyone, you got the rebels that are trying to get at you, and you got, Vader, and you got his crew. But the reality is, I'll give this quick story. We were doing a big overhaul of our online client portal, and I had a date of we were going to be done end of February, and his name was Andy, who was amazing. He's like, Joe, because we did like quarterly planning. He's like, Joe, he's like, okay, you're going to be done in February. That is tax season. It's
Mm.
like we do not want to roll anything out until after late April, early May, because you just won't. A, you're going to tick off your financial advisors, and B, you're not going to get the adoption. You're not going to get the awareness. You're not going to get the visibility. He's like, if I were you, there is this window of time in May 1 to May 30. Let's start there. Let's begin piloting. But he's like, if I just because it's ready to go doesn't mean it's ready to be consumed by our audience. And
Yeah.
like that's like a perfect example of like how you work with stakeholders. And after that, I'm like, Andy, Hillary, whomever I was working with in marketing, I'm like, you're coming with me from step A all the way through just because I wanted their voice. I wanted to hear what they had to say. And they had a lot of really good ideas. And I think I didn't realize it at the time, but that's stakeholder management, right? There were
Yep.
no surprises. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let me I can see the chat lighting up. So thanks, folks. We will come to your stuff in a moment. Joe, I want to ask a very obvious question that I think we take for granted,
Okay.
which is why is stakeholder alignment even important? Why should we invest time and energy into it at all? Why is it important to do even in the first place?
Because the reality is really good product leaders, they're balancing the work, like managing the work versus managing the people. And in many times, managing the people aspect of product is harder.
Yeah.
And it requires really digging into your abilities to have empathy and be a good listener and listen to why it's so hard is it isn't as easy. I actually think the execution part of product management is easier. It's like I'm writing my epics, I'm writing my user stories, I'm getting my
Well,
features, I'm
and let me
prioritizing.
and if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on that
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
because I think especially now with AI and the new tools coming out, the
Yeah.
mechanical side of the job is becoming increasingly easier and easier,
Hmm.
right? It that's not going to be the hard part anymore. But the human element, I mean, humans are messy and complicated, and they have goals and they have these things called emotions, which mess
Yeah.
things up. And but we have to manage that. So I think that's a really excellent point that, like, I see on LinkedIn people talk about it, but I'm sitting here feeling like I don't think we really fully um, emphasize that and focus on it enough. Most of the frameworks that I still see that are out there, most of the tools, most of the methodologies, most of the advice is still on what I'll call the mechanical side
Yeah.
of product management, which is not to say not important, right? But what about this human side? And it varies because organizational structures are different, company sizes, business models, all that sort of stuff. So here's what I'd love to get to next, Joe. Is I'd love how have you approached stakeholder alignment, right? You've been at in so many organizations of different shapes and sizes, and also you've seen so much
Yeah.
when you were part of product side and as a trainer and as a
Yeah.
coach, let alone, your day job. And so, maybe we can walk, maybe if you just share with the folks, like how have you typically approached and maybe what's kind of worked and not worked for you? And then maybe
Yeah.
we'll jump into the questions that I see people are now lighting up the
Yeah.
chat with.
Yeah, and these this is some really good questions, especially when I'm on regulatory. So I had like an epiphany on this, Shardul, because um, so in the beginning of this of the when we started all this, we talked. You did my introductory slide, and if you guys notice, I have two teenage daughters, and one's about to be 19, one's 16, and I've been coaching them in softball ever since they're old enough to carry a wiffle ball bat. And what I've learned along the way is coaching youth sports is very challenging because I'll take my daughter's U16 team. It's I was dealing with this last summer. I got one girl who's all she's caring about is what music are we going to listen to before we do warm-ups. And I have another girl that's trying to figure out what snacks we have. And then I have another one that's like she's convinced she's going to play Division 1 softball. And then I have my daughter who, wants to be part of the team, wants to play in high school. She just wants to keep her tools sharp. So the challenge is how do I take all these individuals and kind of push them in a direction where like we're here to win a game. Now, youth sports has way more than that. Like I'm trying to teach them real world lessons, and so that's definitely part of what I'm doing. But it's like I have all these individuals on this team that are there for a different purpose sometimes, right? What they care about is a little bit different. Their motivations are different, right? What gets them up in the morning are different. What their aspirations in life are different. And so I'm trying to get them to work together so that we can try to win a game. And then I also have the parents, and I
Yeah.
have parents who think their kids are the next Jenny Finch, right? That's
Different
our
set of
daughter.
stakeholders.
Yeah, much. And then I have the umpires, believe it or
Yeah.
not, right? And so it was like one day I was sitting in the outfield warming somebody up, I'm like, oh my God, the parallels between coaching youth sports and product management, they're almost exquisitely similar because what you realize is you have to meet people in the middle. You have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And I think we miss that sometimes. And so, really early on in my career, I worked in Las Vegas with the MGM Mirage, and I had the Bellagio, which is opulence and Italian, and then I had MGM Grand, which is party scene, and then you had Excalibur and Luxor, all different hotels with different experiences. And so the hotel managers and the GMs all had very different wants and needs, what they cared about,
Yeah.
right? And so there wasn't a one size fits all mentality. It's like, look, I got to spend the time to understand context, where they're coming from, what keeps them up at night. And I got to figure out how can I meet them in the middle, acknowledge it, and figure out how we can get everyone kind of moving in the same direction with a common goal and make sure that we're aligned on what that goal is. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it may sound a little cheesy, but how I've handled it is I'm hyper focused on the human side of it, right?
Mm,
Being really honed in on um, relationship building, understanding who they are outside the office and in the office, right? Like, taking advantage of opportunities to be in person, opportunities where there's strategic planning, being there, asking questions, all those things play such a big role in how you build trust. Because
yeah.
ultimately, as product leaders, that's the gold. If we can build trust, then you're golden. You can have the smart if you have a high degree of trust on your team, doesn't matter the framework. As long as you got that high degree of trust, you are going to be 9 times more successful than a team full of geniuses who don't trust each other. And I know that sounds like
Yeah.
a silly thing to say, but that's reality.
Yeah. I don't know. I like cheese. So let's I want to get to a question and then so Joe, I know you've got some stuff, some models and frameworks and examples
Yeah,
you want to share. Well, let's get to a question and then we'll come back to that if that's cool. So
yeah.
Bayan has a question, and I'm going to read his question out loud, so that anyone who's watching the replay then knows what the question is.
Okay.
From your experience, when stepping into a new product leadership role, what are the most
All right.
effective ways to quickly understand the real power dynamics? Who truly influences outcomes, what they care about, and how they're measured, while still building trust and avoiding any sense of being political or intrusive? What a great question. I actually have my own answer to this, but Joe,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you take first stab.
All right. So, when I was at on my previous job, so I went into Gemini and I created a Joe Ghali new guy card and I printed it out and laminated it, right? And then I kept it on my desktop. But you can't underscore the currency that new guy's probably the wrong word, the new person card, right? Play dumb,
Hmm.
ask questions. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings, right? So, as a product leader, when you're joining a new organization, there's a phrase. It's who's who in your zoo,
Who's
right?
who in
And
the zoo?
who's who in your zoo, right? And so, so much of what you want to accomplish in the first 90 to 120 days is you want to meet as many people as you can. You want to ask as many questions as you can. You want to take notes. You're not there to give your opinion. You're there to just consume, get as much context, learn, recap, like that's a little nuance here. Like that's a little like trick. I don't want to call it a trick, but like leverage your M365 or your ability to like transcripts because let the person know who you're talking to, how you heard what they said.
Yeah. There's a great masterclass. Everyone, if anyone's familiar with the app masterclass, um, one of them is with a famous negotiator, former FBI negotiator.
Oh
And
yes, I knew you're gonna say that. I knew you're gonna say.
I'm blanking on his name, unfortunately, which is terrible. Um, Voss. His last name is Voss, Voss. I forgot his first name. Chris Voss. Chris Voss. It came back to me. Chris Voss. Everyone should go check it out. And he talks about two techniques called mirroring and parroting, where you can mirror or parrot back to them what. Now he's doing it for a negotiation, but it can be applied here to make them feel like you're hearing what they're saying. They feel heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I can underscore just how valuable that technique. And yes, Peyton, never split the difference. So, side note, people always ask me like my favorite product manager books. That one's how to negotiate.
Yeah.
Clutch, clutch read for those that are new in the space. But again, especially if you're new, and I experienced a lot of this the last few years being a consultant because I feel like every time you're a consultant, you're constantly onboarding. So I had to accelerate that onboarding so that I could get to delivering whatever we were going to do in an SOW. But
Right.
you got to meet as many people as you can. You got to formulate as many relationships. You got to fight the urge to give your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was an individual I worked with at Baird. It was a financial services company. His name was Jeff Mackey. And I remember in the interview, I said, Jeff, what piece of advice would you give somebody new coming into an organization like Baird? And he said, well, Joe, he's like, there are two types of people. The first person comes in really smart, comes into a china shop, and he just starts knocking the saucers and the plates and the cups on the floor. He's a bull. He just starts knocking everything. He starts giving his opinion, their opinion. He just starts breaking a lot of saucers. The next person comes into the china shop and they walk around, they look at the plates, they read, they ask questions, they wait a while. And he's like, I'm going to tell you that both of them are equally really smart. But the one that takes the time to understand context is the one that's going to have a long and successful career here because he's like, Joe, I guarantee you, every crazy decision you think we make here, I promise you there's a logical reason why we do it. And the person that spends the time to understand the why, you're gold. You're going to
Yeah.
be so successful in your career here. And I've taken that guidance and that perspective with me wherever I've gone in my product career.
I want to share, I want to bring the slide back up. Hopefully everyone can see it. So one of the things that I started doing was building like kind of like a map. And this is just an example. This is something that I teach in my course, 1 week product roadmap. So if anybody's interested, you can go check it out. It's just 1weekproductroadmap.com. But anyways, in a startup, it's a bit more straightforward, right? Especially if it's founder led. There's a small group of decision makers. So, decision making can still be messy, but in terms of who needs to be involved, it's fairly streamlined. Nonetheless, but then when you get to a larger company, this becomes a bit more of a complex issue. And so, I always try and identify the power players versus the influencers, right? That's one aspect. And the power players are the ones who can, as you were calling out Joe earlier, they can make or break your product. They often control budget, resources, key relationships, processes. They just have some strong personal authority or influence over others. So those are the power players. And then there are the influencers. The influencers like the trusted advisors whose opinions the power players may respect, right? Gatekeepers, people like that. And then in terms of teams, you've got your makers, right? The people in the teams who actually make stuff, engineering, design, product management, data analysis, maybe. You've got your enablers. This is like legal, finance, right? They sort of sit on the periphery, but nonetheless still important. And I think a couple of folks mentioned
Yeah.
regulated industries. They have a outsized role. You've got your commercializers. These are the people and teams who market, sell, and support the product. And then the deciders, right? This is basically where budget and resource authority ultimately lie. And so one of the things I started doing was just kind of build this map and see if I can put people, and that would help me. sort of orient my approach to building these relationships and trying to align the different stakeholders. This is another kind of grid which could be useful as well in certain contexts. So, you've got their level of power from high to low, you've got their level of interest. So going back to the very beginning of our
Yeah.
conversation, right? And then what should your approach be? Again, this is a guide. It can vary organization to organization. I think, Joe, you made an excellent point about context. Part of that context is the organizational structure, relationships, culture, all of those things. But in general, as a guide, this I found at times helpful where, okay, high power, high interest, I gotta manage them closely. Whoever that may be. Maybe it's my boss. Maybe it's not my boss. Maybe it's the CEO. Maybe it's not the CEO. Again, it depends upon the organization, right? High power, low interest, just gotta keep them satisfied. Low power, high interest. The ones who are always chirping at you. They don't have any real authority or power, but they're just noisy. You want to keep them informed. And then there's the bottom left, kind of monitor them, right? So that's kind of a map or approach that I've used in the past. Let me see. Joe, did you want to share? I know you had a few things you wanted to share. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I had the same. I think you and I have a very similar technique. I mean, if you want to, I had
is
shared
this
with you.
one? Which one do you want to?
Yeah, it's actually very similar. You know, you have the quadrant. So, like to the person that was asking the question around, what do I do when I start at a new company? You know, what I really like. Yeah, I mean, this has the same grid you have on the right. I just like to list them out, right? And their name, responsibility, their department, and why they're meaningful. You know, like why they're important. And then I have my notes. So, just it's a little bit of a just more details. So again, it becomes your guide. And one thing I've done is, one of my artifacts that I deliver to my leader after 90 days, I share with them this grid and I get their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing anyone? Have I forgotten anyone? Do they have a difference of opinion? Should I move anyone around? So not only, so you're not doing this just in isolation. You're doing this collaboratively with your leader. So that way they know. And even they were surprised the first couple of times I did this. They're like, oh, this is a really good idea. Have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? Or this is why this person is really important. Or, hey, maybe, you know, uh, don't pay not I'm trying to say it in the most politically correct way. It's like not so much don't pay attention to them, but I would make sure you have a regular cadence with these individuals. It's hypercritical versus you could probably have less frequency with these folks because guys, the biggest challenge we have is we're in so many meetings. It's like how do you maximize your time? And this is why you know I'm not a big frameworks person, but I am a fan of quarterly planning or PI planning, if anybody here practices scaled agile, like some of the people in some of these quadrants, I meet them all at once.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm meeting with them individually. It's like, okay, I'm going to take the people in the bottom right and bottom left and maybe the top left, and we're going to like all meet at the same time when we do quarterly planning. So that way they're in the know. So it's not so much I have to meet with them individually, but maybe I can do it collectively. And the beauty of doing that is when you put them all in a room and you're sharing, someone's going to say something and the other person's like, wait a minute, I didn't think of that. So like you're almost becoming a facilitator for conversation so that everyone's walking out of that meeting aligned on what's important for your
Yeah.
product. So there's a win-win from that point of view.
Yeah. There's a judgment in when do we use like shuttle diplomacy, right?
Yep.
Which is I think that term came out of the work that Henry Kissinger did back in the
Yeah.
70s as Secretary of State. When do we do that versus when we can actually it's okay to bring a collective of them together, right? For some folks, it's actually I've found, and again, your point about context. Sometimes it's important. Now I have to meet with this person individually before the big meeting because they're the kind of person who could derail the entire meeting if they're coming into it and this is the first time they're reading my product proposal, right? I'd rather meet with them ahead of time, get their objections, get their feedback, get their concerns, see if I can address it, get them aligned. And ideally, in this particular example, when we have the Big Bang meeting, it's mostly a head nod because everyone has kind of already done that. But in some cases, you can do it the other way around. So again, I think it just goes back to your point about knowing the context, getting to know the people and the approach. I see Dipayan's hand up. Dipayan, hold on for a second because I know we got to one of your questions already, but I want to get to somebody else's question. I'll come back to you if that's cool. So Jen is asking thoughts on how to handle different teams. Actually, let me stop the sharing for a second. Thoughts on how to handle different teams, let's say marketing or logistics, with different metrics. Here's the situation. The overall company goal is profit, and some teams are assigned to increase revenue or growth, whereas other teams are assigned to reduce cost or improve internal efficiency. Great question. So how do you, the roadmap probably has to encompass a bit of both, right?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one because different teams have different KPIs or OKRs. If I'm using like buzzword bingo, so if any one of you had those words in your bingo card, congratulations, you just hit bingo. Um, so everyone has their own OKRs. One of the things that I like to do when we're getting in front of leadership and I'm meeting across different teams is I anchor on outcomes. Like there's two types of outcomes that I anchor on. So, and I'm mindful of horizon. So
Mm,
what are my outcomes for the next quarter and what are my outcomes for the next year? Right?
right.
How can I ensure that whatever I'm doing in the short term supports what we're doing in the long term? Because this goes to how good a storyteller are you? Right?
Yeah.
So, because part of the challenge is we skip that step or we don't spend as much time in telling the story, right? Because if it's logical and makes sense, then let's have a healthy debate. So, there are two types of outcomes that I really try to anchor on as a product manager. And by the way, if going back to the person I was asking, what should I do in the first 90 days? you know, After you've talked to everyone, come back to your boss and say, okay, business outcomes are what's the impact to the bottom line? Product outcomes are what's the impact to the end user, to the customer. And this could be somebody internally, it could be somebody externally. But we have to anchor on those two outcomes because everything we do as a product should be to reinforce the value we're trying to deliver to that audience. And the
Hmm.
value we deliver to that audience should be in support of driving value to the organization. Now, I live in a world where there's a lot of technical debt. Our business outcomes are more not about revenue, but risk reduction and exposure. So, what are the things we need to do to reduce our risk, right? So, it doesn't necessarily have to be so cut and dry with revenue. But going back to the question, I have these different teams, I have different KPIs. I get it. But can we all agree on who the users are that we're focusing on, what value we want to deliver to them, how can we measure it, and then how delivering that value supports the bottom line? Like it's like you have to have those questions and make sure everyone's on the same page. So that way we're all moving in the right direction. And that just kind of goes back to the you're kind of herding sheep. It's like, guys, we're trying to move in this direction. Here, can we all agree on that? And if there's healthy
Yeah.
debate, then let there be healthy debate on where we should be focusing our efforts because what's happening in a lot of organizations is everyone's got their heart in the right spot, but they're all focusing on different outcomes. And it's like we end up delivering C minus quality because we're not marching in the same direction with each other. Is
Yeah.
did I answer the question?
I think so. I'll leave it for Jen if she wants to do a follow-up. One thing I'll add to everything you just said, which I think is excellent, Joe. So Jen, one thing on a tactical level that I've done is when we get into product strategy or roadmap, we'll have a discussion with the key players, the key decision makers on, let's just call it allocation or capacity planning. So in other
Yes.
words, if we
Yes.
say, and just to keep this simple now for the purposes of this conversation, okay, we have a growth goal, we have a we have a growth goal for revenue, and we have a quality goal, and we have a cost reduction goal. right? Or maybe profit goal, okay? Which is not uncommon, right? Well, how do we want, let's just let's just agree on a percentage. So if right now, let's say, hey, the company right now is really focused on growth. We're in the growth stage. We got to go from 5 million to 10 million, from 10 million to 50 million, or 50 million to 100 million, whatever that is. And it's all going to be through new customer acquisition, or it's going to be through customer expansion. Well, then maybe we're going to allocate, as a rule of thumb, 60% of our roadmap towards revenue stuff. And we're going to allocate 30% towards profit and cost reduction, and then the remaining towards quality, right? I'm not saying those are the right answers. I'm just saying as long as we all agree that's an approach, right? It could be a different situation where like, no, we're getting a pretty mature level with revenue. Revenue is flowing quite well, but we need to get more profitable. We got to get some good governance in. We got to get some cost reduction in. We got to get a handle on that. And I've been in companies who have made those transitions. Now let's say, okay, well, listen, we're going to have 50 or 55% focused on profitability. And as part of that, cost reduction. So that's one way to be able to approach it. Brent, I think as a follow-up question, Joe, on your map that you shared, which I can bring up here in a second, his question is, do you come back to this diagram regularly to assess success? You put success in quotes in aligning stakeholders as you first intended. Is it a tool to manage stakeholder alignment risk in real time? And I can bring it back up
Yes.
as you answer that.
Yeah, you don't even have to. I mean, Brent, yes. So, you know, think of it as a dynamic product artifact, just like a roadmap is a dynamic product artifact. Let's say you're building a persona because you're getting feedback in real time, you're delivering value, you're getting feedback from your stakeholders. It's going to evolve as you're delivering value and you're learning from your mistakes or you're learning from your successes. So, any of these techniques, they're not meant to, you just do it once and you put it in the drawer and you forget about it. It's like, no, you've got to have a regular cadence, like just a reminder on your calendar, block it out. I actually, fun fact, I actually have a reoccurring quarterly, like 2 hour block where I go in and I update some of these key artifacts so that I can keep current with it. Or, I mean, it depends on the tooling. Like if you use Aha or Craft or any of these other tools, some of these you can do in a tooling from a tooling perspective, but I have time allocated to do that because, guys, if you want to really impress your boss, that's how you spend your one-on-ones is you share with them updated versions of these and you say, here's what I learned. Based off what I learned, here is the changes that I'm going to make to my plan. Here are the changes I'm going to make to my roadmap. Here are the changes I'm going to make to my persona because I've been getting this feedback. So it shows them that you're constantly reacting and thinking about what you're going to do next. Long-winded answer to your question, but I hope I answered it in the right way. I'm on my third cup of coffee today, guys. So just bear with me. I'm a little amped up. So just pardon my excitement.
It's all great. Now, so Dipayan, I know you were super patient. You had your hand up. Yeah, what's your follow-up question?
No, it was a simple one. And I'm glad we were talking about this diagram of Joe's. You said you will share it with someone. Who was that someone? I missed it.
My leader.
Okay. And
Yep.
is there any specific feedback that you will seek, as in like whether these are the right
Yeah.
stakeholders and these are their right motivations?
Yeah. So I learned this from a previous boss. His name was Lucas. And so, he was a little bit more prescriptive with me, but, he had kind of given me some guidance around doing something like this. He wanted to know what my plan was for engaging with stakeholders because this was really important. And so, um, and the person before me got caught up in meeting overload to the point where they were working long days or they couldn't get things delivered. And so he was very mindful of how I was spending my time, which is okay. It was a little micromanaging, but I dig it. And so he wanted to give me guidance and perspective, but what he wanted to see me deliver was I met with all these customers, all these stakeholders, where do I think I should be focusing my time? How am I going to engage them? What did I hear? So it's more just like bringing the conversation and having a collaborative discussion on, I've met with all these different stakeholders in the organization. Where do I need to spend my time? Why do I need to spend my time with these people? What are the things I need to think about? So it just becomes like a talking point in your one-on-one. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Um, uh, Jen just added a really great point. Yeah, you were talking about learning,
Yep.
Joe. So she gets the credit for this. So if any of you are in a product leadership role, one of the things that is good to ask your PMs who report to you is, what did you learn? And this is true whether like no, so certainly if you just hired them, they just started, it's first 2 weeks on the job, first 30 days, up through 90 days, and then after that on some regular cadence, there's no science to it, maybe quarterly, whatever, ask, what have you learned? And the key is not just like from junior PMs, you'll get a lot of technical answers, right?
Yeah.
What you're looking for is this whole human side as well. Like, what did you learn about the organization? What did you learn about the business? Of course, what did you learn about customers is another important element. But when it comes to the stakeholder management side of things, that's an opportunity for you as a leader to coach them, to say, hey, did you meet with so and so? How did that go? What did you learn from that? Ah, didn't go so well. What do you think you'd do differently next time? Right? So it's by the way, on that point, it's easy for us inside. We're like, I know how to do it. I can just tell them what to do. And it's like, hold back because they won't learn. Ask them, what would you do differently next time? And then you can kind of guide them from there. Deeper, you got your hand raised.
Oh, my number came immediately. Thank you for that. Uh,
I'm just trying to
uh,
manage the traffic as best as I can, buddy.
so thank you for this topic, both of you and all the attendees. And this is such a fine dance, politics and everything else. I just wanted to say two things. One is like end of the day, all said and done, don't forget your immediate stakeholder is your boss, basically. So for so many different things, things can fall out of alignment because how they're measured, what's going on in their world, yada yada yada. So that's there. And the other thing is where I'm coming from an org which is highly regimented, all the things that it's a regulated. You guys mentioned healthcare governance. I got all that shit. But one of the things that I found difficulty and somebody advised me into navigate around is like I would ask my stakeholders as to how are you measured? What's incentivizing you? Or how are your teams measured? What's your KPIs? All the typical questions. And I would get the typical answers back. But there will still be some gaps in alignment. So somebody advised me that these people are also under pressure from their leadership as to you got to make this happen 50%, 20%, all that stuff. They can do or they cannot do, and they're also frustrated because they're relying on me to deliver, somebody else to deliver, and they can have it. On the other side, these people also have something which is their pet projects in their mind, which they would have loved to done 5 years ago, but something happened, they could never get to it. One other way to kind of like get into become their favorite person is if you can align to say that, yeah, this is your official target. I'm going to help you get there, but this is your unofficial favorite project, which you never got to get there. On the side, I'm supporting you there as well. That is kind of an emotional or like, call it whatever, some sort of a like more personalized bonding. And if you can get that, I was able to get that from only one individual out of so many, but if you can get that, that person will, I guess like cross over to help you out in times of need.
Yeah. Yeah, Deeper, I think that's a really excellent and important point. Thanks for sharing that. I'll share, you got me really excited, so I'll share my perspective really quick, and then Joe, I'll let you go. And then I'm just gonna do a time check here. Um, so yeah, look, a career limiting move is to ignore your boss.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, you need to understand what are the motivating factors for your boss? How is he or she assessed? You may not get full insight into it, but absolutely asking them, hey, what are your goals or how are you measured? And to the extent that they're able to share, hopefully they will. Which, by the way, again, a comment on any of you are in product leadership roles. One of the things I would do is I would as much as I could openly share with my team, guys, here's how my performance is assessed, right? So, and as a quick example, as a story,
Yeah.
it turned out there was a big strategic partnership that the company was pursuing. It kind of, the CEO was working on it in the background for a while, and then things started bubbling. It started becoming really real. It was going on for months. It wasn't a real thing, but a great opportunity. And then suddenly hitting Q1, we had the strategy set, the roadmap set, resources, everything was aligned. And this suddenly became a hot button thing. And it was worth millions. And so he came to me and he's like, I need your help on this. We need demos, we need prototypes, we need this, we need that to win this business. First of all, me in my role, I would have been frankly stupid to say no. Well, hey, Brad, listen, we've got our roadmap here. We can't spare any resources. Wrong. I would have been out the door, right? So that became real. I needed some things from my PM team. So I went and I shared, there were certain things for confidentiality I just could not share, and that happens. But to the extent that I could, I would share with them and say, hey, listen, guys, like, you know, we need to figure out how to make some changes to our sprint planning in the next month because we absolutely need this demo because it's going to help win this big. I can't tell you who it is. I can't tell you the state right now. I'm just not allowed to, but I'm just telling you like this is really important. So I think yeah, so Deepro, terrific points. Joe, I'll let you share your perspective on what Deepro just shared.
Yeah, I mean, for me, even in a job interview or even in the first week of starting a new job, I always ask my leader, how can I make you look good? I
Yeah.
mean, I try to keep it really simple. And actually, I think a job I got a while ago, or maybe it was a consulting gig. In any case, I think they were really surprised I asked that question. And I think that's what got me the opportunity, to be honest with you. So, instead of saying, how can I help you? It's more, well, what can I do to make you look good? I've also tried, this is the kid in me, the perpetual kindergartner. I said, you know what? For sitting here a year from today, what'll get me a gold star? What is it that I would have accomplished that would have gotten me a gold star? And I take a variation of that question and I ask the different stakeholders that I meet with, because again, what I'm doing is I'm building context, right?
Yeah.
I'm building context because, you know, uh, I'll share a quick story, and I know we're running on time. When I worked in online travel, I had a coworker, Tom. Tom was like the leader of our team, and he had been in the travel industry since the 60s and 70s, specifically Las Vegas. And here I am. I'm big into tech. I'm working with the MGM Mirage Group, and I think I got it. I know what I'm doing. And someone's like, you should really talk to Tom. And I'm like, when I get to it, I get to it, right? I'm like, I'm busy, all this. And I made Tom very angry because I'm like, why doesn't he want to talk to me, right? So I sat down with him and uh, I asked him some of these questions. And I learned more in a 1 hour conversation with Tom than I did with some of the hotel managers I worked with because, he taught me some very valuable lessons around how to manage the hotel managers in
Mhm.
Las Vegas. And he said to me, he's like, Joe, nothing is ever free. They're always going to expect something out of you. And my point is, and I'm trying to get to it quickly, is don't dismiss a stakeholder too quickly, right? And it's not necessarily the quantity, it's the quality of the conversation they have. Sometimes it's just they just want to feel like they're heard and that
Yes.
you care, right? It's like a relative. We all have those relatives, right? So we just can't forget the human piece of it. Like there are people we work with that have been in this space for a long time. Don't dismiss it, right? Appreciate it, acknowledge it, be respectful of what they've gone through. Because even when we're talking about doing online bookings, dealing with Las Vegas in 2005 was the same as dealing with Las Vegas in 1975. It's just some of the players have changed, but some of the undertones are the exact same. And so that I've taken that that lesson to heart with me wherever I've
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, great. All right, so here's what I want to do because I know we're
Exactly, Jen. That's
it.
exactly the point. Just let Jen know. Yes.
Uh, Jen, if you don't have any of those relatives, then that might mean that you are the relative. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Great
Jen's
point, Joe.
right.
Joe, I think this is seems like people are pretty passionate about this topic.
I could talk.
So,
I got like 3 more pages of stuff we could talk about. So absolutely.
what other questions do you guys have? You can stick them in the chat or just raise your virtual hand. And in the meantime, I'm going to scroll through and see what questions I may have missed. But if you got one,
Yeah,
go for it.
and Shardul, I had a slide. It's like, what are the tips? Like the next
Oh,
30 days. What
sure.
are some of the tips? If you want to put that on the screen as well,
I do want to put that on the screen. Let me get to it.
I can talk through it real quick.
Okay, is it this one or
Next, go to this one right here. So this is
okay?
your action plan. I just realized I didn't spell holder correctly, so sincere apologies for not spell checking. So goodness gracious, I'm embarrassed. All right, target three, target three critical relationships. So that's what you can do the next 30 days, right? Formalize your decision rights, meaning get clarity on like your racy, so to speak. Take either Shardul's or mine, create like that 1 page snapshot, like your plan, right? Institute a predictable cadence. And maybe you'll probably talk about this in an upcoming session, right? Master the respectful no. So there are ways of saying no without saying no, right? It's like, if this is about trade-offs, so making sure that if there's a sequence you have to follow or there's a decision you have to make, like try to figure out how to say no without saying no. To your point, that could be a career limiting move. And see if you can try to fix your team's worst communication pattern, which is like for us, it's like if a leader is messaging you, if there's more than 3 responses, we're going to have a meeting, right? We're going to get up and we're going to talk about it. So that's just kind of like one of the 3 message rules. So some of mine, I did this really fast while I was on the train this morning. It kind of came to me. So my apologies because I look very shoddy in my spelling. But I just wanted to make sure you guys could walk out of here with some actionable next steps.
Yeah, and one other thing I can share with you guys, and again, this is in my course, is you can kind of map one of the things that I would do when I come into a new organization, or even I sometimes gut check on an annual basis because organizations grow, is their decision-making culture versus my buy-in approach, right? So is the decision-making culture top-down? Is it more consensus-driven? Or is it more owner-led, meaning there's a person who is designated as the owner or the leader for this initiative and they have authority to make decisions? And then what is my buy-in approach? Is it a more consensus-driven one? Is it a directive one? I decide, everyone follow. Is it more collaborative or participative? I go more deep into all of these in the course. But the point here is that we obviously all want this, right? Every PM always dreams of this scenario where, hey, I'm the product lead. I'm the decider. I get to, I decide and it's as easy as that. But of course, it never really works out that way. And so when you kind of map it, what I've learned in my career, that frankly, if you take the wrong approach and the wrong culture, it can lead to disaster, right? So for example, I worked at Capital One 15 years ago. I don't know what the culture is now. I'm guessing it probably hasn't changed much, but back then it was a heavily consensus-driven culture. If you came in, bull in a china shop, with a directive approach, my way or the highway, you will fail. It will be reflected on your performance reviews, and you'll get sidelined, you'll get that feedback, you'll probably be out the door. It's just not going to work, right? If it's a very top-down centric, and often many founder-led organizations are like this, right? Again, if you take it's got to be my way. I'm the product manager. I'm the expert. I know the best way. You're going to start butting and clashing heads. Guess who's going to win? Not you. That's just the reality. You need to take a different approach, right? Maybe it's more collaborative or participative. So, again, something to kind of keep in mind. This is all about the human element that we talk about. Actually, Joe, one question I did want to ask you.
Yeah.
Um, you talked about the human side and you mentioned the word logical. Here's a question. I'm surprised nobody asked this. A lot of us we come from logical backgrounds, analytical backgrounds. We were rewarded for being logical and analytical. We were an engineer, maybe we were a consultant, or certainly pretty much almost every educational system out there rewards analytical, critical thinking, right? A lot of which doesn't really help with stakeholder management because the human side requires EQ, this fuzzy thing about EQ.
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you either learned or coached or told other folks, who may struggle in that, right? They're really sharp analytically and they come like, look, I've got the data. I did my analysis. Look at my beautiful spreadsheet, or I put it into a beautiful PowerPoint. It's all logical. If you just follow the dots from A to B to C, it leads to D. What's difficult about this? And then they
Yeah.
miss the human side, right? What have you found that? What how do you normally coach people through that?
Yeah, I mean, I try to talk about in terms of, and I'm going to use a fancy word like dimensions, right? So there is what's happening on the outside. What are the trends happening in your market, right? In your space? What are the headwinds? And then and you get signals. So be paying attention to those signals. And then there's also what your users are saying, right? Like if you have a commercially facing product, like what's Google, what's your NPS if you have an NPS, or what are your Google reviews? What's your feedback? What are some polls, or what, not polls, but like your survey? What's your survey feedback? Then there is like the analytics, how people are using how are people using your platform, right? There are those analytics, right? Um, and then there's also one that people sometimes miss is like what's going on in the organization. What are the headwinds and what are the trends happening in the organization? Like a lot of organizations, it's all about AI, right? So um, when we're when we're when I'm dealing with someone that's very analytical, I'm like, look, sometimes we have to agree to disagree with our stakeholders. What our job is, 99% of the time, is we give them options. We say option A, option B, option C, option D. Here are the scenarios. Here's the cost. Here's the trade-off. Here's the benefit. Here's what I'm recommending based off of these criteria. Like sometimes that's great. That actually, like just being able to do that, you're golden. You may not have the right. You may not be in the same. Let me take that back. Sometimes you and the leader may not have the same goals, but at least you're demonstrating critical, thoughtful, and logical thinking, right? Because what this will do is it builds your street cred so that the next time there's a decision, they're not going to make you get in front of them and show the four options. They're going to be like, I trust Joe. He's logical. If whatever decision he's made, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. So I try to just think outside of just the straight analytics. Like there's more that go into it. There's more that goes into the decision than just the straight facts. And I tell people, I think you can listen to one of our early podcasts. I swim in the gray as a really good product leader. You've got to deal with the gray, and not everything is black and white. And we have to accept that. And sometimes our job isn't black and white. It's here are these four options. Here are the trade-offs. Here's my recommendation. Okay, that's my job. Let's talk about it and see which way you want to go down.
Awesome. Dipro, you got a question or comment?
Yeah, and thanks for going beyond. So, as you guys are talking about this, the one thing that I am going to lean on my most recent experience is if one of you just pull up the Shardul, if you pull up the matrix that you had, which talked about the power holders and all that, right? I think one other element that kind of caught me in a tight spot was I'm working with multiple stakeholder divisions, let's say, and I'm in alignment with my immediate stakeholders. They are the direct decision makers in whatever I'm doing at that point in time. These are the directors, senior directors. Within their org, at some point, there is a super, power play at the VP or the SVP level. Something falls out of sync within that stakeholders hierarchy, which is kind of out of my control. And so I'm kind of drifting with as well. I'm cruising with this notion that, yeah, I'm in perfect stakeholder alignment because I'm in like lockstep with my partner. But the partner is not in lockstep with her boss or his boss, right? And then suddenly when the bigger powers come to play, it just blows. Any I love this kind of like, the matrix you have here, but any suggestions you guys have to like maybe like a double check, like be in alignment with your immediate, but also kind of make sure somehow circumvent, make sure is your
Yep.
boss also in alignment with you, because that could be like bigger fractures outside
Yeah.
of my
Yeah.
org.
Yeah,
I can
great
take
point,
this
Joe. What do
one.
you say?
Okay, so this is where, and I've gotten more and more people to get behind this. This is why it's so critical that we have some sort of quarterly alignment where it's not just our team, but we're bringing the broader organization and we're sharing, okay, here's what we accomplished. Great. Here's what we're seeing in the market. Here's what we're marching towards, right? Like you're getting all these people in the room. And if there's healthy debate or dialogue, then let's have that at the beginning of the quarter versus getting halfway through and like, wait a minute, someone's coming in and trying to be a hippo. By the way, that's highest paid person's opinion. But they're coming in and they're trying to bamboozle what you're trying to do. So, but it's there's even a you have to close the loop on that. So, not only is it having that regular cadence, making sure that everyone that comes to that knows that that quarterly update is not just a status meeting. The purpose of that meeting, and this is where it gets missed a lot, is the point of this meeting is to make sure that we are aligned on the same initiatives and the priority moving forward. And if we're not, then we need to use this time to make sure that we're on the right path. And a lot of PMs don't do this, you've got to recap it. You've got to socialize it like, okay, here's what I heard. Here's what we agreed to. And like, you just got to have, I guess it's a little bit of hand holding to do that, but you've got to include some of those other cross-functional teams that you don't necessarily work with, but they represent risk, right? So you're meeting with them on a quarterly basis with a larger group, but then in between, you're keeping them up to date. Like maybe it's the sheet that you're using, or maybe it's the roadmap or the vision doc, but you're constantly reminding them. And if there's feedback, then let's talk about it. But like you're almost like in a state where you just have to over communicate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Deepa, so in my course and training, I talk about establishing what I call a roadmap routine.
Hmm.
And this is a key pillar of that. One thing for us to keep in mind in PM is that it is not our partner's job to keep their bosses aligned with our plans. They've got their own stuff, and their own things they're accountable for. The only time where I've seen that work is when my goal and their goal is so perfectly aligned because we're literally like being scored, or we have the same performance metric, or we have the same, like we're literally on the same project. Then I can be more assured that they're keeping their boss aligned. But beyond that, then in addition to like the things that Joe was mentioning, what I've done is so I may have to take the burden of having a meeting with their boss just to, hey, want to keep you up to date. Include my partner. Don't
Hmm.
don't do it independent. Or
Yep,
just
yep.
check, hey, if you can't be there, is it okay if I just meet with them one-on-one? Or sometimes just have a heart to heart and say, dude, man, like, or whoever that person is, I'm finding there's a bit of misalignment. What's going on? Is there anything I can help with? Because, I met with your boss and found that she was not on the same page as our last conversation. I was a little caught off guard. Is there something I can help with? Or, what's going on here? So that's another way you can approach it as well. Deeper, you're going to get the last question and then we'll adjourn for the day.
So I wanted to ask my second question. How do you uncover a stakeholder's real agenda early before it shows as derailment later?
Uh, hmm.
I mean, you have to look at history. You have to look at their history. You have to look at the decisions that were made prior and see like if you can kind of start to notice a pattern. I mean, that's you know, you have to ask just this is just where you just have to ask why. You have to ask questions,
Mm.
right?
So,
You've got to dig deeper.
In
you
my
know,
first meeting with a stakeholder, one of the things, like my very first meeting, one of the things I'll do is start by asking them, hey, what are your goals? What's
mm,
top of mind or important to you? Most of the times they'll share it forthrightly. Sometimes, some people are a little close to the chest type, but I'll just start by asking what keeps you up at night? How are you being measured or those sort of things?
I also can maybe do it in a way of, hey, tell me about something that didn't work out last time. Like tell me about like the last failure we had from a product perspective, from your perspective. Where do you think we fell short the last go around? And that'll give you a little bit of more insight on like how they're perceiving, like, oh, IT doesn't know what they're doing. They never tell me what's happening, or they didn't take this into consideration when making their decisions. Like try to like find previous scenarios or projects or initiatives that maybe that they thought weren't successful, and peel back the onion. Like take a couple of minutes and try to understand, kind of like what do they view as not being successful, or what do they view in their eyes as being a failure? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this is applicable for like joining as a new product leader in a different organization as well, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
You can even do it as a gut check later on, a year in, 2 years in. Just hey, just want to do a catch up, and then in the catch up, ask, hey, what's going on in your world? What's important to you right now, right? Or any of the questions that Joe just mentioned. You can ask them those just as a quick realignment outside of any specific projects to kind of get some insight into where are they at right now, right?
Yeah.
This is the shameless plug portion of the session. So if any of you are interested, if you want to learn more, I have an online course called 1 Week Product Manager. There's the URL. There's an entire module on stakeholders. In fact, maybe one day I'll just do a course on stakeholders. And most courses are too broad, too formulaic, or too dogmatic. As we know, none of those work. And so what's different about this course is I've included a lot of battle-tested techniques, just like the ones we've been talking about, that my teams and I have used in the companies we've worked in. I've also included actual roadmap examples that have won over internal stakeholders, C-level executives, and customers. The whole goal being to help transform your approach to road mapping and stakeholder alignment so you can lead with confidence and drive meaningful impact in 7 days. That's why it's called 1 Week Product Roadmap. And because you're attending live, through Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern, you can enroll for 20% off, or if you know someone you think might benefit, feel free to share it with them. I'm going to put the discount code in the chat. So this will not be in the email when I send the replay. It's just for those of you who are attending live. You get this benefit. So you can use that. There's US pricing and internal pricing. All right, with that shameless plug out of the way, just to give you guys a forward look on what's coming up. The last event we have of this year, there's a live AMA with me next week, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then we'll pick things up back in January. We have a live AMA there. If you're an Inner Circle member, it's free for you. And then as you can see, we have a whole roster through Q1. We have Simonetta coming in to talk about ROI of AI initiatives. We got Scott Selhorst, some of you may have heard of him, from Tyner Blaine, outcome-driven product management. Teague Hopkins is going to talk about AI enablement and system building. Really interesting topic. We got Rena from product side. She hasn't told me her topic yet, so we'll figure that one out. Matt LeMay, you may have heard of him. He's got a new book out, Impact First Product Teams. We're going to do a live feature estimation challenge. We'll see if it pulls off. So you guys will either get to learn from us or laugh at us. Probably more of the latter, but that's cool. We got Rahul Abhyankar, go-to-market, to talk about go-to-market, one thing that's often ignored by a lot of product teams. Matt Moore will to help talk about influencing without authority, and we've got Greg coming in to talk about product management for a tech-enabled service versus your traditional commercial product, which is really interesting as well. So lots to look forward to. Again, I'll share this out in email. Also, you check out Joe's podcast, theproductporch.com. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll pick it up again in January. Joe, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. Everyone, have a great weekend. Happy holidays and a happy new year. See you soon.